Hi, my name is Maidashita. I'm a rising senior in high school and I'm planning to pursue English as a major in university. And I developed this speaker series for myself and others like me who are interested in writing and potentially becoming published authors. So, thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me today. I'm very excited to hear what you have to share. I'd like to begin by asking you to tell me a bit about yourself and who you are.
Absolutely. Hey, so first of all, thank you again for having me. This is very cool. My name is John Wayne Communale. That's my first name is John Wayne. I know it's weird. But hey, here we are. I am a published author. I write psychological horror is I would say best defines my genre. I have 13 published books. I have three more that come out this year. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, right downtown, but I am a working writer, so I'm constantly touring for my books. So I probably spend 40 weeks on the road doing horror conventions, signings and stuff like that. So
Great.
yeah.
Cool. Very cool. My first question for you is, what are your biggest inspiration, like sources of inspiration for your writing?
Um, well, like you mean things that inspire me like to get ideas or like authors I take inspiration from or
Anything.
either of those things. Well, I like I was saying I do psychological horrors like twists and turns, like Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, those kind of things. So as a kid, like I watched all those kind of shows like the Twilight Zone. There's one called Amazing Stories. They're like vignettes that were just short and they always twisted things. And I was like, "Oh, it's about this, holy, cow or whatever." And that always inspired me like as a kid just to come up with stories. So I take a lot of inspiration from those kind of things, just trying to fool the reader, not fool the reader, but just take you down a path where maybe you're like, oh, how did we get here? Some of my favorite authors are Kurt Vonnegut, number one with a bullet, for sure. He's inspired me a lot, and so has Chuck Palahniuk and Bret Easton Ellis, I would say.
Very cool. So, from any of those like sources of inspiration, are there any like common threads or themes that you like keep drawing, keep coming back to throughout your works?
Um, I do put like there's a usually a strong element of the occult that runs through my books in some way, like just magic or the devil or things, just demons, just stuff like that. Some of it's more centered on that than other stuff, but that does run through a lot of my books, I would say, is a common theme.
Very cool. So, what are the writing and editing processes for you? Like for you when you like write your books, like do you process and like implement feedback, or do you just like read through it and change wherever you feels necessary? Like what's the writing process like?
No, absolutely. So I kind of grip it and rip it. I call myself a pantser, which means I write by the seat of my pants, in that I don't outline when I first start writing, like sit down to write like a manuscript, like a new book, right? So I'll get the kind of initial idea and I will just start writing that. And so I don't keep any kind of traditional outline, but I take notes like every day as I go. I'll be like, oh, what if this happens? Maybe this, or this is the scene I'm going to write tomorrow or whatever. And so the next day when I sit down to write again, first thing I do is read through all my notes that I've made just to refresh my memory. Then I'll read everything that I wrote the prior day. So however much that was, go through and I'll kind of be doing edits on the fly, revising things, punching it up, things like that. And then when I get, when it's all completed, then of course I'll start over again and do a whole pass myself. I highly encourage, especially if you are going to submit a piece like to a publisher or a magazine, something to get published, to have an editor look at it. It's you can hire like people offer editing services on all kinds of, like there's social media groups. There's just like Fiverr, things like that. It's very important to have someone else look it over and not just like, oh, my mom read it and she thought it was great. Of course your mom's gonna think it's great. Of course your partner's gonna think it's great. You need that objective eye that's not tied to you in any way. I highly suggest that, especially new writers or beginning writers, have another person look it over who knows what they're doing editing wise.
Yeah. And in many ways it's like when you write something yourself and you go over it so many times, it might be hard to see it with fresh eyes. So I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
sure. So how do you develop your characters? Are they like based on real people or are they like entirely fictional?
A little column A and a little column B. A lot of times, there'll be elements of people that I know, friends, maybe family members, or maybe somebody I just met, like out somewhere, whatever, at a convention. I'll maybe take personality traits or quirks or something about them and blow it up into a full, like, fleshed out character. Um, so there's elements of probably someone I know in every single character I write. However, it's just elements, and then I've built this character around my friend's stupid glasses and backwards hat or whatever. You just sometimes it's deeper than that, sometimes it's not. So
Yeah. And you co-authored the anthologies and Hell Followed and Mondo Bizarro, if I'm saying those correctly.
mhm.
And how is contributing to an anthology different from like writing and publishing your own like independent book? Like, did you collaborate with the other writers and like was the process a bit different?
Well, a lot of anthologies are usually a little bit different. It depends. With those two particular ones. So, and Hell Followed is a themed anthology that Death's Head Press put out a few years ago, and they approached me and they were like, "Hey, we're asking authors to write this story that's about the end of the world based on the way it ends in the Book of Revelation in the Bible." So everyone, like these 20 authors, however, like had their own like kind of take on that. Mine was this funny rock and roll band playing in hell type of situation. But some people, were a little more serious about it, things like that. With Mondo Bizarro, that one was just, I think the theme, there was no theme. It was just like bizarro fiction, which is absurdism, surrealism, that kind of thing. So it was just a crazy story about whatever that, as long as it's in the bizarro thing. So it wasn't as themed, but it was like, here's what we want from it. Whereas the other one I had to write specifically to that theme. So it's a little bit different. Not, and I don't work with the other authors or anything like that. You write your own story, you send it to the editors and work with them one on one, and then it comes out.
So do they reach out to you first or do you like apply to be part of the anthology or
It can happen both ways. Like when I was first starting to get published and get my stuff out there, I was submitting, and still do to this day. Like there'll be open calls, like you can find on websites, that will be like, oh, all these places are accepting horror like submissions or dark fiction submissions. They're open for it, and you can just like open call apply to an anthology that's excuse me, posted like that on from the publisher. Um, and then for those two, I think like I was asked to be in them. They'll sometimes the publishers will ask a few authors. Sometimes it's invite only. Sometimes it's a little of both. But yeah, they I guess the answer is both. You can find the open calls, but sometimes the publishers will reach out to an author specifically to ask for a story.
very cool. A more general question.
Mhm.
When and like how did you discover your passion for writing? Was it in school or afterwards?
No, absolutely. Like ever since I was like in elementary school, I loved to read. So I would read voraciously. Like we would get assigned like, Ramona Quimby, age 8, and I read the whole book the first night, rather than it's like, okay, chapter 1 by Wednesday. And then I'm telling the whole class all about it. And the teacher's like, you can't spoil the book for everybody, John Wayne. And I was like, I'm sorry, I love to read. So that really ignited my passion for storytelling, and things like that. So I just started writing goofy little stories as a kid and doing sketches and things like that, and I just always wrote and wrote, and just something that stuck with me, I guess.
Have you ever like revisited one of your childhood ideas in your books, or are they all new?
Uh, no, no, I have not revisited any old childhood ideas. I have used like my childhood home a lot of times in the books. If there's like a house, it'll always be like my childhood house, the way I kind of set it up and see it in my mind and describe it. Also, like an Easter egg, one of like pretty much every book that I write, there's a car in there that one of my buddies, Nick, owned at some point. It's always just a fun little Easter egg to put in there. But that didn't answer the question at all. But sorry.
Oh, no worries. I noticed that you've also written like a collection of stories from your life, called John Wayne Lied to You, a mostly true account of the adventures of a modern day hero. And I'm guessing that's like more autobiographical or more of like creative nonfiction kind of rather than what you usually write. So how was like writing a personal narrative different from writing fiction?
So you're absolutely right. So that's creative. That was creative nonfiction. I I'm from Houston, so when I lived in Houston for there's a series that still goes on to this day called Grown Up Storytime, and it's a performative storytelling series where somebody writes a story that's like you won't believe this happened to me type of story, right? And then somebody else in the arts performs it at the show, like a comedian or maybe an actor or some whoever, just anybody can perform it. So I started writing those, and I got pretty much just added to the series, and I had a story every month for almost 10 years in that series. So I have all of these I have over 100 stories like that are from that book, John Wayne Lied to You. Those are some of the early ones. But it's slightly different from writing my fiction because of the way that these stories are written. They're like written to be like this happened, man, this is so crazy, and then oh, here comes so and so, and oh my god, who let the dog in, crazy kind of. It's written to be funny and entertaining. But it really helped me like develop my chops for writing my fiction, because I was always on, I always had this story to do. I always had to punch it up, make it good, make it entertaining. So doing that, like writing that creative nonfiction, helped me like sharpen my talent a lot to apply to writing, my fiction as well. So,
For me, I have basically only ever written creative nonfiction because I find it hard to um like mold things out of nothing. So like and like as in fiction. So it's
mhm.
I feel like it's very different for you where you're kind of going from like you're using creative nonfiction to sharpen your fiction skills, whereas for me it would probably be the opposite because I've never, dipped my toes into fiction before.
Right.
Very cool.
Um, Thank you. Yeah, that's cool.
For me at least, like memories from the past, they like tend to be hazy, but like when you creatively recount your memories of life experiences, do you like balance the more, I know the title says like mostly true, so how do you balance like the fact and then like kind of the imaginary parts to create like a convincing story? Like do you embellish it a lot or I don't know.
It's like there's zhuzhed up here and there, you could say. It's just like anything, I could, you know, tell you, what'd you do today? I went to the store and then I came home. And that was about it. I could tell you that same story and make it, and you wouldn't believe it, man. Like one aisle was on fire, all of the Captain Crunch burned down. It was a travesty. Like I could, maybe that didn't happen, but maybe a box spilled, and I told you about it for 30 minutes rather than that. So maybe there's like things like that kind of worked in to kind of keep it going, make it more exciting. But it's the truth is in there, in the stories at the base. So.
So you don't ever like add experiences that never happened or like characters to make it more interesting. You don't really do
Oh,
that.
maybe I'll put some characters in there or change people's names and stuff. But yeah, no, there's stuff that happened. Just maybe the situations that I put around it, kind of that I've packaged it in, might be a little massaged, truth wise here and there.
Do you typically ask people for like whether or not you can include them in your writing? Is that like a
No, no, because like I know if it's someone close to me or whatever, I'll be like, yo, I'm putting you in this story, and I'll use their name if they want. But I don't ever write like I would never write something that was so close to some like exactly like somebody that they would be like, hey, is that me? And I'll be like, no, she was wearing a yellow shirt. I'm wearing a yellow shirt. I would never make it like that. So.
see? You mentioned that you currently like travel around the country performing the written word. So
Mm.
have your experiences with traveling impacted your writing and like have you met new people, come across new opportunities because of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It absolutely has helped in my career, and it keeps it going. So yeah, I've met tons of people. I do a couple of podcasts. One of them that's on my Patreon is where I talk to artists that I meet all around the country, like not just writers, and actors, singers, other musicians, comedians, all kinds of people, and we just have a discussion about how they do their art and what their deal is, and I learn a lot all the time, so that definitely helps influence my writing and just makes you a more well-rounded, I guess, and you talk to other authors or other artists, and you just get ideas. It's inspiring, so that all around helps. Yeah, I've written I have a collection that'll probably come out next year that's like 8 stories they're not true, but they're like tour stories because I play in a band as well. So it takes like just like kind of something that like you'd get to the club and it's like the sound man is really eccentric, and super strict or something like that. And maybe that was whatever. And then but one of the stories is about this sound man that's a complete psychopath, and what this person that's going through, this artist, is having to deal with from each of these 8 tour stops at random. So those are things I definitely pulled, like, yes, we've all, if you're on the road, you've dealt with this person before, you've checked into a hotel and had this happen before, and now I'm going to make it terrifying for you when you read it. So yeah, being on the road does help me out quite a bit, and influence a lot of things.
And it like helps you connect with other writers in a sense to
Mm.
like play off of each other's ideas, I guess.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah, I love to talk to other writers. It's awesome because in a sense you're like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about because you can relate in that way. But it's always interesting, bounce ideas off, methods, just like things like that, talking shop, I guess. So yeah.
have you ever thought about like collaborating with one of them, or are you more of like a solo writer?
So I've thought about it a couple of times. I did I did try it once with a buddy of mine who's another author, Kelby Losack. He's actually a Texas guy. Very cool. And we were trying to do this because a lot of friends of mine like have, co-authored these books, and I read them, and sometimes they're better than others. Sometimes you can like I can tell so and so is writing this chapter and so is writing this chapter, and unless that's what you're going for, I think it's you're not supposed to really be able to tell.
Mhm.
And me Kelby and I were doing this back and forth, and it didn't work for me because the way we wrote was paced very differently, and it had to be like, okay, well, you have to finish this before I can do this part, and then I would skip ahead and then get lost in the plot and like, wait, what were we doing? So we kind of shelved it to be like, not completely dead in the water, but maybe to be revisited later. So I guess yeah, I've tried to do it, but just haven't had it to work out yet.
It's probably hard to like balance each other out like when you have such like distinct, I guess, like authors' voices, and it's like it's better not to like it's better if they like mesh together and the reader can't really tell that they're different authors. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And for me, it's just the way I work. It just wasn't jiving, I don't like to wait too much on someone if I just need to sit down and write my story, I just want to do it. So,
Yeah.
you got to work it out. But people do it, and people write great books. So,
Finally, what's some advice you would give a high school student interested in getting their writing published?
the number one bit of advice I can impart is do not quit. That is the number one thing that just sinks it for people. They just quit, just give up. This is not Writing is not an instant gratification thing. It's a hurry up and wait a lot of times, and it's something that if you're trying to pursue it, it's just like a lot of the arts. It has a lot of rejection involved, and I call it building up the calluses. So you can't take rejection personally when you start submitting. Don't let it get you down. I keep track of all my submissions on this spreadsheet. It's insane. But you kind of easier said than done. I realize it because it's hard. It hurts your feelings. You're like, man, I thought it was good. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not for that editor or not for that publication. You have to start looking at it like that. Don't give up, and work on your craft every day. Even if you can only write a sentence or 10 pages, uh, this is your craft. Dedicate yourself to it and work every day at it.
So when you get like a rejection or something along those lines from a public or a publisher, like an editor, do
Mhm.
they just like reject you, or do they give you like feedback and do you implement that?
Sometimes they'll be like a blanket letter that's like, thank you for submitting to so and so. We appreciate your story here, but it didn't fit with our blah blah blah. So thanks. Try again. There are times when an editor will give you feedback. Like it's not all the time, but it's always nice when they do because they took a little bit of time to be like, I'll get notes that'll be like, this is cool, but just we don't publish this kind of horror, or um we like this, but this character could be maybe, blah blah blah. That's just their feedback, and you take it or not. It's just how it is because it's subjective. It's art. It's one person's opinion. You just kind of take all the feedback in and do what you will, with it when you process it.
That's very helpful for me and for anyone else who might be watching this. So thank you.
Heck
Um,
yeah, my pleasure.
it was such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here.